Okay, folks, good morning. All right, let's get started. Where we left off. Okay. Well, we're working on the last two spearmen here for the Armenian infantry. And see if we can avoid falling asleep like we did yesterday afternoon. Well, I needed a nap, and I took one. Took about an hour and a half nap, and continued the rest of my day. Make sure this is set correctly. There we go. For some reason, every time I move a microphone, that button that's on the back of it is set in the wrong place. I always touch it. It changes the microphone setting. I don't know if it makes that much of a difference, but it needs to at least be set in the direction that looks like it's getting voice sounds from the correct direction. All right, let's see. We got boots. Yeah, I think this guy's going to need to have a grayish type hat. I think that's what we're going to go with for this guy. And of course, we don't have anything. Doing the blue pants we did. The blue pants put me to sleep, apparently. Oh, I bet we still have some metal left here. It's alive, we do. Awesome. Just saves time to be able to use a color that's been already put out here. Not really a paint savings or anything, just good to already use a color that's already been pulled out here. Well, hopefully it won't be a slow morning this morning, or it won't be on here very long. Hopefully not. Just depends on whether people have plans or not. How many brown shields do we have? Really only one truly brown. Well, let's do this guy's hat, and then we can come back around and find exactly what the base color of this shield is going to be. Sometimes it's better just to kind of wing things and see how the colors may lay next to each other instead of trying to predetermine everything right off the bat. The first army I did, I tried to predetermine everything. I tried to predetermine which figure was going to be on what stand and what position on the stand and what like the dominant color of the horse and the rider was, and it's too much. You end up burning a lot of extra time just trying to plan all that stuff around, and it's better to wing it. If you're going to paint a lot of guys that are going to look the same, I paint usually one as a test. See if I'm on the right track. And, I worry about it way too much. Rarely has there been a time when I really didn't like the color choices that I make, and I would actually benefited from the fact that I had only painted one guy. But, it's kind of like analysis paralysis. I don't want to waste my time and then realize that I was on the wrong track, or the colors didn't work out how I expected them to next to each other. And that's just experience. That's, in my case, well, I've been painting since 1985, so figure I'd be good at this at some point. But especially now, at least since the mid-90s, the painting method that I use of this layering these thin down paints, and I'm not really sure how the hell that happened. I don't know how I determined, hey, let's thin down all our paints. But once you thin down the paints, they don't take up any space thickness wise, and you can just go nuts if you really wanted to. And it's not an issue repainting things, but it doesn't happen very often, fortunately, because ultimately it's just a waste of time if you're painting stuff how you don't want it to begin with. And what's really the point? This white made a mess over here. Got every which way. all in all, these are pretty simple figures. They have a oversized shirt or jacket, whatever you want to call it, pants, some form of shoes, a spear, and a funny looking hat, a beard, and a shield. That's it. They don't have a ton of little things here and there. They're simple people. Simple people. Can we give this guy a black beard, or is there too many of these already? I don't think there's too many. I think we should probably do that. He's got kind of a light overcoat. So I looked at my stats this morning. I rarely look at them, but I looked at them just to see if I've ever had that elusive first female watcher. And apparently it hasn't happened yet. I'm not concerned about it. But like I said yesterday in one of the, well, it must have been yesterday morning, I think, there's just some things that some demographics are just interested in and some that aren't. And wargaming is, at least historical wargaming, maybe if I had a Warhammer channel or something like that. Well, that'd be a cold day and you know where. But this is a male-dominated hobby. For better or for worse, it is what it is, So, Mr. Dirk, welcome. Aha, double whammy. Hello, Tony and other folks. It's actually just Dirk and I. Good evening from Oz. Okay, Australia and New Zealand representing. Good morning, gentlemen, or good evening. I wish I wasn't there. My weekend would be over. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, we need some activity. I tried to do a second painting session yesterday, and that did not go over really well. I did not get much audience interaction, and I damn near put myself to sleep. Well, I actually did. I actually had to disconnect and take a nap, which is almost unheard of. But I woke up an hour and change later, and what did we do? We rolled into the second part of the day. Went to the gym and everything, so it worked out pretty well. But I didn't know that I needed a nap. I'm probably gonna need one today because yesterday evening we had our goddaughter with us, paying us a visit. She's my daughter's age, and her and I stayed up late playing a video game. And I mean late, it was like midnight, and I was up at 5. So, and I still hadn't showered yet at midnight, so I was up till like 1 o'clock in the morning. So I'm probably gonna need a nap today. But late Sunday night here, yeah, that's bad. That's bad news right there. Not exactly my Sundays are kind of depressing anyways. They're like the day that you wonder, did I have enough fun this weekend? Because it's about to come to an end. It's about to end. Did I end up making a shield with the SS Camel Black? I don't think I did. Let's do that. We're going to have a design on this shield. It's going to be really basic, but we're still going to have a design on here. Oh, shit. Get this guy to do, and he's almost done. And then we got one more spearman, and all these guys are... I was hoping to get this done yesterday. It just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. You know, we're not on a time crunch to get them done by any particular time. You know, it's going to take as long as it's going to take. The guys of Manzikert are a little later. So this army list is up to Manzikert. So this is what, 1040s, around 1040s to 1080. I guess a little bit right after Manzikert. So that's what we're going to kind of base them on, is Manzikert stuff. And then I'm going to add other elements to make the Comnenian armies, the A's and the B's. So the cavalry is going to be the same for all of them. I'm not going to, even with Manuel's reforms, I'm not going to make the cavalry look any different. You know, they're still armored horsemen with lances on horseback, regardless of what time period they are. I haven't really noticed a difference when you start getting into Manuel's reforms around, I guess it's what, 1140, 1147, something like that. They don't really look any different. So the cavalry is all going to be the same, which is about at least 4 stands of the army. So a third of the army is cavalry, is what we'd call heavy cavalry. And it's going to be the same. It's going to be shareable across all 3 lists. I really was building the Komnenen list. I was going to do the A and the B, and then I'm like, you know what? What if I backdate some units? I could make the Panzerkurt boys and use a command post. You know, command posts are always a good hoot. So I'm like, and then I'm just like, well, what if I just do this army first? And then maybe we could do some Manzikert scenarios. I don't know. We've got Seljuk Turks, or Luke has some Seljuk Turks, so. That's where we ended up where we were. Alright, so in typical fashion, we're gonna have a cross on this guy as well. And I saw a picture of a double cross. Ha! Double cross. Got double crossed by a cross. Alright, let's drop a line through the middle here. I had to be careful, it doesn't look like my Hungarians too much. Boy, this isn't flowing well. That's a problem. There we go. That's it, just real simple. Just a double cross. I saw that in some illustration. I'm like, all right, that'll work. I keep these guys simple. I envision them as just showed up in whatever the hell they had on, and that's what they fought in. This is a primarily mercenary army. And the Macedonian dynasty went and did a reconquest campaign. It was pretty successful at it. And then these guys showed up. And were frugal with military expenditures. And Randy, well, they had a few issues. But a Manzikert scenario would be kind of interesting, because one of the problems with Manzikert was one of the emperor's nobles decided to leave the field. At the wrong time. And that was a problem. That was the wrong thing to do. So, wonder how deviation arrow do with two distinct lines of cavalry in the Byzantine manner. I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a challenge. And a good challenge. After playing so many historical scenarios recently, gotten some ideas on how to do these things that you want to play a scenario and make the kind of decisions that the commander would have to make. So I think it'll be cool. but may have to wait a little bit because I got to get these guys done. And we're going to start a series of scenarios not with this army, but with another army that's being completed for Mitch. And I'm not going to tell you who that is because if it doesn't get completed, then I have to provide updates. But I'm not completing it. So supposedly at Historicon, it should be able to be picked up. And that's what our trip to and back from Historicon is going to be, is make some scenarios for this particular army and some of their enemies. So it's an army we don't have yet. And we'll see how that goes. But it was kind of inspiring, at least for me, to see what Connor had done with some of these scenarios that nothing is known about. And he just pulled a Barker and pulled some things out of his ass. And after seeing so many scenarios that actually were a lot of fun to play, but not much was known about in real life, it kind of empowered me to make the same kind of decisions in the future for other scenarios. So I think that ultimately was the coolest thing about the scenarios that we did. It's and just did stuff like that. So I'm not opposed to making special rules for certain scenarios to get them to play certain ways. Refuse to reinforce the front cavalry line, just drifted off. I mean, you could do stuff like, I'm not saying this is the case in this scenario, but you could do something like, if cavalry support another cavalry from behind, they give them a +1, just for this scenario. Because if that's, what it does to get it to play appropriately, you could do all kinds of things. There was several scenarios that we played where the casualties didn't matter for one team or another. There was one scenario where even if you killed units, they came back on the board. So there's a lot of things you can tinker with that alter the standard deployment of just Byzantines versus Seljuk Turks, and that's it. I'm going to build, I don't know if all the options for this army, but damn near all of them, because there could be scenarios where somebody has more than 12 elements. And that's okay too. I mean, you don't have to go crazy like, 24 or something like that, but the proportions of the forces are important. So there's a lot of stuff that can be tinkered with it without being an extreme type of thing. And I've made 4 scenarios before in the past. In 2015, actually, is when we made them to use as kind of a learning thing for 3.0. 3.0 came out and people were having a hard time trying to understand it. And I figured, well, let's make 4 scenarios. They're all battles that Rome fought in, and people can take turns playing them, kind of round robin. Sit on opposite side of the tables, and 2 of them you can play the Romans, and 2 of you can play the non-Romans. And I think that we're successful, except that we had very little turnout, very, very little turnout, just that one time for DBA in general. Probably the worst turnout for DBA ever. So they kind of sat there, and we did do a video on one of them, which was Aquae Sexte, I believe is what it's called. It's in my videos there. And we do have the other 3 videos, the other 3 to do, but they're all based on stuff that a fair bit about, but there's a lot of battles that just nothing's known. So, and that happened with a lot of Connor's battles, and that happened with Hannibal after Cannae, that period between Cannae and Zama, where he was traipsing around southern Italy for 14 years. Nothing really is known about in detail. And What is known is just through the pages of Livy, because Polybius's work does no longer exist. Polybius, that was a lot more reliable than Livy's over dramatic, Hollywoodish type explanations. So, and not a lot of stuff is known on Livy. Doesn't go into detail. Well, most of these historical writers don't really go into the detail that we'd want them to. They're not writing for war gamers. So he made a lot of judgment calls on a lot of these battles that, he literally pulled out of his ass, and he kind of empowered me to do the same. I'm hesitant to do that. I was hesitant to do that, but it worked out really well because it made for some good games. So I think we're going to move. We're going to move forward and do more of those scenarios. Maybe not a series of like 3 for an army. I mean, there's a lot of the Punic War stuff, but if we were going to do the Mongols, which we're not doing the Mongols next, but if we were going to do the Mongols, you could easily do 6 scenarios of the Mongols, and they could be different things. So we're going to go in that direction a little bit more. It's going to take some time playtesting some of this stuff out, but definitely looking forward to doing that, brainstorming and stuff. And we're probably going to do one at a time. We're not going to be like, okay, we'll wait till we have 8 of them and release them all at once. Eddie Caro, there you are. Yeah. Like your scenario games, Hannibal in the Alps comes to mind. Try to do a Teutoburg Forest based on. Yeah, you could do a lot of things. You could do a lot of stuff. I want to do scenarios though that that the terrain's going to look better. So I know that when we did the battles with the Acquisexte, I had used felt, and it looks okay, like for different levels of the hill. But if we're gonna play test and put the game out, I'll make the terrain specific for that battle, and that's fine. We can reuse them. Those 4 battles that we did were that I made up with playtesting with Mitch. They turned out to be really cool. There were 2 battles that most people had heard of, and then 2 battles that were kind of obscure. And what was really interesting is one of the scenarios was, one of them was Pyrrhus versus Rome. Another one was Philip V versus Rome. Philip V of Macedonia. We had a Hannibal versus Rome. And we had the Acquisexte, which is the German barbarians versus Rome. And the interesting thing about the Carthaginian one was, it was a battle that was in that time period between, the lost years between Cannae and Zama, and it was not one that Connor did. So Connor did all these battles, and one of them was not the one that I did. And the one I did, what was interesting about it was actually based on someone else's interpretation of it. So I think his name was Bill Summelrud, something like that, on Fanaticus. He had done this one battle, and I think, I'm not sure if we took it exactly like he did it or we changed a few things, but regardless, Hannibal's already deployed and the Romans are coming out of a camp. So the Romans have a few of their forces out on the field, very few, but most of them have to get out. They have to deploy out, and Hannibal's already set up for battle. So that's one that is slightly in the favor of the non-Romans. One of the battles, of the 4 battles, one of them is in the favor of the Romans, one of them is in favor of the non-Romans, and the other 2 are kind of even up. And Acquisexte was even up. The other one that's even up is Heraclea, which is Pyrrhus and the Romans, and basically a river. It's a river crossing. The Romans have to cross this river. And but for the most part, the scenarios I did not have any special rules from the standpoint of these guys have to do this or they have to do that. Like, the Romans have to continue moving forward until they cross the river. I didn't have special rules like that. And Connor added so many special rules in his scenarios that forced your hand to have to play an army a certain way. And I think that was empowering to see how that played out and how it really worked well to do some of that stuff on my own. Okay, we're going to call this guy done. One guy left. So I think that was a useful tool to be able to do some other things. But I don't want to use felt terrain. It just doesn't feel right. Even though sometimes we have minor issues with figures falling off the terrain and stuff. Well, some of the terrain that I built was the 1.0 version of it. So it's steeper than is practical. It looks right. It's just steeper than it is practical. So, you can make it 3D. It just doesn't have to be that 3D-ish. But I'm looking forward to doing that. They're not going to be for sale or anything. They're free. I don't sell shit here. I only do things for money I don't enjoy doing. If I'm doing something for free, I'm probably enjoying doing it. That's pretty certain. I feel like we need a light colored shield. Oh, shit. I like the one where Mitch's army was deployed facing the wrong way. I like that one too. That was cool. And scenarios like that could really go. If I remember correctly, he got pretty lucky. Because if he would have rolled like a couple of bad pips, he would have had issues. Yeah, that was a really unique scenario. I might not have thought about doing something like that ever. So, he gave me some ideas of what works and so forth, and multiple camps and camps in the middle of the battlefield, and sometimes camps. Although I think in a lot of his scenarios, he didn't proofread them well. And he meant to have a camp when it said they didn't have one. So, there's errors in them. I don't think they really affected gameplay. But, if you're a one-man fire team, which I'm not sure that he is or not, it's a lot easier to make mistakes when you don't have somebody to proofread things or playtest things with you. We tend to play games pretty aggressively and try to get milk out of a turnip. Try to get everything you can out of it and try to abuse the system. And if you can't abuse it, then it's probably okay. But if it has these loopholes, kind of like tax loopholes, if there's a bunch of loopholes, then it's something that needs to be changed. So, Spanish versus Romans. No, I don't think so. I think it was. I'm not sure what it was. I think it was Carthaginian. I think it was Numidians. I think it was Numidians versus. I don't know. It was a cool scenario. He had some really innovative ideas. So he kind of opened up the pores in my brain to kind of try some of these other scenarios that we're never going to know anything about. You're not going to find out all of a sudden you're not going to find Polybius's work on the lost years in the peninsula with Hannibal. and be able to, you know, recreate that kind of stuff. And even if you do find them, maybe the information we're looking for just doesn't exist out there. So it's here. You don't play a scenario, or you just say F it, and here's my interpretation of how of a similar situation of how it might be, you know. So I thought it was kind of innovative the way that he did Kanai and Zama in particular. Two battles that I had not played before because they are difficult to represent on the tabletop. And the main thing is you know, can you approximate the type of decisions and headaches that the commanders would have had in a particular engagement? And I think in the case of Kanai, it went pretty well. But I think he pretty much stuck to 12 units per side, and in the scenarios that I've done, that's not a consideration. That's not a consideration. You just look at proportions and you figure, okay, you know, if this army had 40,000 men and this one had 30,000 men, you know, you're going to have more in the 40. But, you know, how much is it more? Is it 15 stands versus 12? Or is it 12 versus 9? You know, you just kind of have to decide how it's going to work out based on the amount of space that they take up and things like that. And that's actually kind of a fun thing to do, is to kind of, you know, figure out how exactly is it you're gonna do that. But when I was making the 4 scenarios, I did not want to tinker with the rules too much, because the purpose of the 4 scenarios was also to get people to understand the mechanics of DBA, because it was really made for beginners. So the setup was already done for you. There was no alternative setup. It's not like you can set these guys within these parameters. This is how they're set up. It was like a standard starting point, and that's how you started the battle. So it was really geared for that. And Connor's stuff has a lot more flexibility in it. So I don't know. I'm really looking forward to doing that. We're not going to start with stuff. We're not going to start with a matchup that people are very familiar with. But that's our intent, is to do that. And anyhow, maybe it won't be really popular because it's kind of a obscure type of thing. But all the battles that involve this nation are lack of information, big time. So, love to see a set of scenarios based on the campaigns of Belisarius. Set 1 Persia, 2 North Africa, 3 Italy. Yeah. Well, we need to have a Belisarian army first. I'm not going to tell you it's not coming, but I don't know. At some point, I will be doing them. I don't know if it's 5 years from now or 2 years from now, but I'll be building him. The biggest problem with that period Byzantines, I think, with DBA is the Vandals. Because the Vandal list, I don't know if this is the same case in DBMM Dirt, but the Vandal list in DBA is all knights. They may have like one unit that's not a knight. It might be like a horde. I don't remember it anymore, but there's no way in hell that in real life a Vandalic army would be a North African Vandal army would be all heavy cavalry and no foot troops whatsoever, even natives or anything else. You know, I find that extremely difficult to believe. It could certainly be predominantly that, or even 75%, but I just find that very strange that that's the case. That they wouldn't have any even native troops or anything like that. I don't think they can have any allies. And who the hell wants to paint 12 barbarian heavy mounted, mounted troops? I wouldn't mind building a Vandal army, but it'd be the earlier one with the barbarians and stuff. And Ostrogoths, I got Ostrogoths. So we got that covered. I wonder how Armadi handles the North African Vandals if they're all mounted as well. So, anyways, I'm more interested in, say, painting in the future, painting for scenarios and weird things like that, more than really for tournament play and stuff, because I've done enough tournaments. Home rules time then. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a couple 3-4 battles that they fought against the Vandals. And there's a couple 3-4 battles that they fight against the Ostrogoths. Not counting, Siege of Rome stuff, which really is kind of outside the scope of uh, of that stuff. But you like if you had a scenario, for instance, if you're reading through the history books and you find out that, you know, um, you're reading about, say, Belisarius's campaigns in Italy, and you come across some engagement that reads something along the side of there's a deputy commander that was sent from by Constantinople to reinforce Belisarius, and it was commanded by some guy, and they got ambushed by some Ostrogothic advance force. Belisarius is besieged in Rome by the Ostrogoths, and the Byzantines sent a relieving force that consisted of, some guy, and he was ambushed by the Ostrogoths and wiped out. And that's all that's written about it. I'm confident enough that I could make a scenario based on that. And it doesn't have to be 100% realistic or even 20% realistic. It just has to be a scenario that is different than all the other ones, that is fun to play. And I think that playing through Connor's stuff invigorated me to take those risks, so to speak, instead of just avoiding something like that altogether. And that's what a lot of the history is. You'll have things that are written just like that. There was some force that was ambushed. Doesn't tell you what the force is. It doesn't tell you what the terrain layout is. It doesn't tell you what the guys that attacked them force looked like. And it doesn't, it's all that vagueness. I would have just avoided it instead of like, all right, let's make a cool scenario, So I think that playing through the 16 or so scenarios that we played of Connor's, where he just made those calls, whether they were right or wrong, and it worked out well, then that's the way forward. I think I'm looking forward to doing stuff like that. DBMM has all the Vandals as knights as well. How is that possible? Oh well. Home rules. Well, I have the Ostrogoths, so we'll be doing the Ostrogoths versus Belisarius first, whenever we get up to Belisarius. And we've got, Mitch has Sassanids. Or somebody calls them, I've heard somebody call them Sassanians. That just, I like Sassanids. I definitely have Preferences and pronunciation. I prefer Seleucid to Seleucid. Doesn't really matter as long as somebody knows what the hell you're talking about. Anyhow, we're going to be making some of those on our own. So, how long it'll take, I don't know. But to be continued. But it's funny because there was all kinds of different winning conditions in his scenarios, including ones where casualties didn't matter. But what he didn't do is one thing I always considered is making skirmishers not count towards your losses. Like there were scenarios where your losses didn't matter, but there weren't any scenarios where certain troop types didn't count towards them. So I'm telling you, it was very eye opening and a good experience to go through those many scenarios where the thing that's going to be the most difficult for me, and only because I don't consider myself computer illiterate by any stretch of the imagination, but there's just some things, and it's probably gotten worse as I've gotten older, that I just don't feel like they deserve the time and attention that I want to give them. Like, for instance, I am very patient about painting. I don't care how long it takes to do what I'm doing right now. I really don't want to cut any corners doing it. But other things like, say, figuring out how to make a map that I can add into a Word document, for example. I just have no interest in spending. If you look for things on a computer, like how to do stuff, the next thing you know, you burnt 4 hours. I'm really not interested in burning a ton of time looking for that. And for example, there's a lot of in the video musics that the video musics in the videos that I do, and when I use background music, there's all kinds of sources of free background music you can use. But you have to do a couple things. First of all, it's got to be copyright free, so you don't put it in a video and then YouTube marks it for being, a copyright violation, and then I have to take it down, which I can't do because at that point all I can do is take the entire video down or take the sound off for a certain section, so it looks like shit after I've done a lot of effort in it. So there's sites you can do that, and the process of there's a lot of really talented people that make music. And of course, we're talking all music that doesn't have any lyrics or anything in it, just background type music. You can eat up so much time going through the libraries of just one site that has free downloadable music that you can use in your videos. I mean, I did it one time for a couple of videos. The next thing I know, I'm like 3.5 hours in and I haven't even picked the song yet. I'm like, I can't do that. I don't have the patience and time to just devote, 5 hours to try to pick the correct song that might be the perfect, appropriate one for a video I'm doing. It's just not something I'm willing to spend that kind of time on. Because again, while I'm doing that, it's not like we can be having this conversation or I'm painting this, or it's just something I'm totally devoted to that. I can't interact with other people in my family. It's just basically like solitary confinement kind of stuff. So what I've been doing for songs, for instance, is just using the ones that are available through my editor of the videos, which there's a lot less songs, but I don't have to worry about whether they're copyright infringed or what have you, copyright free or what have you. So that's just something that, you know, I'm not willing to put in 10 hours just to get the perfect song, because you can eat up a ton of time just trying to figure things out. And yeah. It seems with the Sarmatian Roxolanites, you can have up to 12 elements of nights. Yeah. We'll be in and out today, Tony. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you too, WG. Wolf Gaming Store. I also like the scenario with the 8 blade elements, which cost 2 pips to move. Yeah, it was really cool. So more troops, but less ability to move them. Yeah. Doing prep for my epic nap paint video, so going to keep you on for a bit. Okay, I'll be right here. I could try a DBMM idea where skirmishers count as half a loss and knights count as 2. Absolutely. Could do that. And I have the DBMM rules specifically for reasons like that. Not because, and I mentioned this before, I have no intention of ever playing DBMM, but there is a lot of juicy inspiration in there. And it's not because I don't like the detail of DBMM. It's just that I just don't have it in me to learn another rule system that's also written in Barkerese. And don't get me wrong, I think the man's a genius. But I think he's not. It's not user friendly. It's not user friendly. So. All right. I think we're going to go with that color. Let's give this guy blue pants. But we're going to, oh, the other guy has blue pants. Oh, we're going to do dark blue with this one. They're not going to be the same. I picked up all the DBMM books just for more information on, okay, you know, you can allow, like for instance, when I did my Wallachian army, if you don't have DBMM, you think you can use Polish allies for the Wallachians, and you can't, according to DBMM, because the Moldavians and the Wallachians are lumped together in the same army list, but it's actually the Moldavians that can have the Poles as allies. If you play DBA only, you'd be able to think that, oh, I could use Dracula as a knight general. He's not, he's a cav general. But you wouldn't know that until you look at the details of what the commanders of the different armies are within DBMM. So, you know, DBA still has a lot of the stuff dumbed down. And it was really bad in the days of DBA 2.2 and DBM, where it's like, oh yeah, make this 8 bow stand, but they behave the same as a regular bow. Well, that's just stupid, okay? If you're going to make me base guys differently, then they need to behave differently. You know, I'm not going to paint guys the same, and I'm not going to paint guys differently, and then they behave the same. You know, an 8 bow and a standard bow shouldn't behave the same way. I'm not saying one of them should always be better than the other in every situation. I mean, there's give and take. I mean, but you know, a 3 and a 4 auxilia shouldn't be the same. So, yeah, there's definitely going to be some tinkering. And sky's pretty much the limit. Pretty much everything's fair game to be able to be tinkered with. But it's for the purpose of creating, you know, historical scenarios / matchups that will play more like what they're intended to be play like. I like that one scenario where you can only play with a foot wide of the board. I mean, I didn't like it because it was extremely restrictive, but it was something else. It was something else to do. You know, it was another way to play the mechanics of the game. It's a way to try out mechanics that maybe are useful in future versions of a game that we may play, whatever exactly that means. One of the things that I think the game is a very small change in DBA that would have profound effects on the game and would make one particular troop type play a lot more realistic, at least on paper. And I say that on paper because we play test the shit out of stuff. I'm fortunate that I have somebody that I can get together with pretty much every week for a good amount of time, and we like to break things and to expose their failures. So I think we should be pretty successful at it, but we're going to do it one battle at a time. But getting back to what I was saying, one of the things that would be a profound effect is, and if a threat zone, if the edges of the threat zone didn't matter, the side edges of a threat zone don't matter, but the front edge does. So if you did something as simple as, when you have do I have a stand around here? I'm not saying do this for every element. I'm just saying do this for light horse, for instance, or even cavalry. Some of these scenarios coming up are going to feature one army that has a significant amount of light horse in it. So if this is your threat zone, let me make sure I get this on the screen. If this is your threat zone and it's being projected by this unit, if the threat zone, you had to be inside of it to matter. Just like the sides, if somebody's over here, if you have a stand that's over here, let me get this. Okay. If you had an enemy stand here, if this is your threat zone, your enemy stand here, he's not locked down because the sides don't matter. Because if they did, it would be stupid that they would be locked down because they're over just a little bit. Okay? But this front does matter. So this guy would be locked down. But if you made it, you had to be inside the box to actually be locked down. If you had a mounted element, do I have a 40 by 30? Oh, now I find a 40 by 40. Let's pretend he's 40 by 30. And he went into this guy. And he got recoiled. Remember, let's pretend this is 40 by 30. And you have a choice of either recoiling this distance or you're 30. Then you could recoil 30 if you wanted to keep the guy locked down. But if you recoiled 40, you'd be free to move laterally and go in a different direction. So where this would be advantageous is if, let's say you have a unit here and your opponent moves to attack you. And then you get recoiled knowing that your turn is going to come up next. So you recoil 40, you're not locked down. It's your turn to roll for pips, and now this guy can go somewhere else. So just that minor change of the back of the threat zone having to be inclusive would have a dramatic effect on how light horse and stuff like that could be maneuverable. So it's going to be an opportunity to try some of these other things that just to see how they work, because I don't really have an agenda per se. And I think that's what I think makes at least Mitch and I good play testers, is we don't have this agenda where it's got to be a certain way and that's the way it is. Throw out something and then we'll try it if it works. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't work, Rules for bow variety, not so easy for a bigger army list like DBA. Yeah. One of the other things is that people have a lot of problem with is solid auxilia and fast blade. And it's real easy to change what they are in a certain scenario and try them out and see how it works, you know? Anywho, to be continued. Because at some point I can see not playing DBA anymore. But with the same armies. So, and that point may be 20 years from now. So we got to start getting some ideas of how to get there without trying to take everything on at the same time. So all this is a test bed for that. And I've said before, I'm always going to be playing with these armies that I've spent thousands of hours doing. And I like the size of these armies and the decisions that we make. There's a lot of things going for it. I just don't particularly want to, hey, let's stop painting and work on rules, because that's not very therapeutic for me. Working on rules is not therapeutic. But it may not happen, and like I said before, it's a lot of playtesting has to be done. I mean, a lot, not like they've done with other rules. We've played, just Mitch and I have played the DBA more than probably all the playtesters for DBA 3.0 combined. We just have. And that's not poo-pooing them, it's just a fact. It's a great freaking game for us to play this long, and it could be better. It could be better. But like I said, that's assuming they don't come up with a DBA 4.0, which they probably won't. And, like I've said before, if that's the case, whatever we come up with will not have army lists. So you're still going to have to, Phil Barker's legacy, you're still going to have to buy his stuff to get your army list. Because I'm not going to do like other people and create my own army list that basically you take Phil Barker's stuff and you take all his research and reformulate it and pretend that you came up with it on your own. And there's at least two other games that cost money that have done that. I have caught them red-handed doing that. And I'm surprised that they haven't had the pantsuit off of them. It's probably not worth it. I don't know if Phil's even aware of it, but, not that I'm a sue-friendly person. I don't think that lawsuits solve anything. I think you should be raised right and never have done that shit in the first place. But, I'm asking too much for some people. They're just, I have too much personal honor to do something like that. I could be an asshole, but I have a lot of personal honor. There's just some stuff you don't do, But anyhow, at least two other games have done that. And it's just wrong. And both of those other games give no credit to Phil and his work. And they use other excuses and stuff like that. Hey, you can do whatever you want. I'm just saying that, you need to give credit where credit's due. Even if Phil was an asshole, which I don't think he is. I think he's a nice guy. I've met him once. Unfortunately, I only met him one time. He's kind of like a grandfather I never met. And I'm not trying to kiss his ass. It's just the truth. It's real easy to avoid telling lies when you just tell the truth. I think he's a nice guy. Is he set in his ways? Absolutely. So am I. His only fault really is that he doesn't understand that we really want to get his game correct. And sometimes it's very difficult to do that, the way that his rules are organized. I'm not even going to say written, organized. If you can dissect every sentence and take it, one at a time, the game isn't difficult. The problem that everything is only repeated it's not repeated, it's just said one time. So, it's difficult to find sometimes. But anyhow, it is not very noob friendly. I don't see very many people picking up a set of Phil Barker rules and saying, yeah, let's roll with this. And even get close to playing the game correctly, because I've been there. And I don't consider myself an unintelligent person. I mean, I'm not the smartest elephant in the room, but I should. After this many games, I shouldn't have things that we still get wrong. So, we've had so many arguments in my store over Zach. Great idea, but in a case, I'd also give Allmount the option to follow up. There's lots of things you could do. You could, when you double a unit, regardless of what it is, they advance into the space of the unit that just got eliminated. And it could be skirmishers. You could also do, you could prevent that from happening by, well, how would you do that? Because you wouldn't have any pips left over. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. And it's not to make, because the combat in the game could be more complicated, but you've got to organize the rules so that they're more flowchart friendly. So, anyhow, we've even tested some rules to allow some units that do not shoot at a distance to shoot at a distance. Again, it's not to unbalance anything. It's to make things feel like they play. And we've done probably a dozen games where we can do combat and they don't have to line up. I mean, we have a clue and we play a lot and we want the game to be better. So with all of those things, I just don't see. Now, it is a Herculean task. It absolutely is. And so it's not something that I have any interest in pursuing at this moment. Because it would basically be, okay, I'm not going to paint any new armies for the next 3 years. And we're going to work on that. And that's just not where I need to be right now. It's a retirement project for me. So, and if I get around to it, I get around to it. If not, we're enjoying what we're doing with what we have, But it could be better. It could be better. My big gripe is when I play light horse armies, I just don't feel like I've made light horse decisions. I'm just kind of, even when I play a normal game, I don't feel like I've played an ancient battle. I just felt like I played some chess-like. I don't really mean a chess-like game, because I think chess sucks. I would never play one game of chess, much less 2,000s of it, 2,000s of games of it. But it's just too you're thinking about things of the mechanics of the games that you shouldn't have to in a real battle. So, anyhow, enough about that. But all good things to come. All good things to come. So, yeah, there's all kinds of things. There's all kinds of things you could add to it, Dirk. And that was my whole reason of getting the DBMM rules to begin with. Because there's all kinds of juicy tidbits in there that, I think Solid Auxilia should move faster than Solid Blade. It may only be a half base width difference. And I think that DBMM they get an extra 50 pace movement. I don't know. I think so. So it's one thing at a time. It's too overwhelming to try to take everything up at once. And I think this is an opportunity to kill a lot of different birds with one stone. So. And I'm making these decisions after playing 2,000 games of DBA, not like the guy that plays DBA the first time. Well, this is wrong. We need to change this, that, and the other. Okay, well, how many games have you played of DBA? Well, 1. Okay, well, you're the wrong person to be involved in it. I'm just saying that, not everybody's voice and opinion is of the same value. I'm not saying I'm smarter than everybody else, but we've played more games than anybody. There's no doubt about that. I put that up against anybody. We just have. We play every week, and we play hard, and we have a lot of fun playing this. That's one of the things that I hate about Facebook. I like a lot of things about Facebook, but one of the things I hate the most about Facebook is some noob asks a question, and the first person to answer it is somebody who's never even played the game. Their opinion isn't worth as much as somebody else's. I'm sorry, it's not. And I'm not saying that I get everything right, but we've had to look at the rules a hell of a lot more times than somebody who's just read the rules once. So you get a noob that gets advice about how to play a complicated set of rules by another noob, and then you have to undo all that damage that's been done. And it's just really frustrating, you know? And what do? Other than you can't really go in a public forum and say, just shut the hell up, you don't know what you're talking about. But you want to give people the right idea so they don't go to their first tournament and realize they've been playing the game wrong. And then everybody, they're upset about it, you know. But that happens so many times. But it happens in other forums as well, in car forums and things like that. Car forums actually are a lot worse because people are like people get tired of the same question being asked over and over again, so they like specifically go out of their way to give wrong advice. Something along the lines of, "Hey, I'm doing this. What is it that I need? What's causing this?" And somebody's like, "Oh, somebody always asks the same damn thing. You need to change your blinker fluid." They'll say things like that, like, "Car's broken, take it back, part out." Car forums are the worst about that. So, yeah, misinformation is worse than no information. And there's a hell of a lot of misinformation out there on the internet. So, and that happens all the time. Or somebody will ask a question, and I'm not going to. I don't answer questions anymore without a picture or a drawing, because you may somebody may ask a question, but they describe it wrong, or I understand the situation wrong, so I give them wrong advice. I don't want to do that. Not advice, but hey, what do you do in this situation? Well, this is what should be, and then they realize they'd mislabeled things. So if you're going to ask a question, please provide a picture or something like that so you get the right thing answered. I don't want to steer people in the wrong direction. That's really unsatisfying. Well, whatever we've been talking about has definitely succeeded in me not falling asleep. So that's a win right there. But that's all the kind of stuff that's been going on in my head for the last couple of years. It's nothing people need to be free. Oh, you're going to play another set of rules? I said, no, but I mean, I've played this game for almost 20 years. And, so it's not like I'm going to disappear and not play DBA anymore. But, there's ways it could be made better in the next couple decades. Not really a time frame, just is what it is. But all right, I've been talking so much, I need to get some liquids, so I'm going to be right back. Gotta go do chores. Uh-oh. Not the chores. Oh, I guess I closed this up too soon. Uh-oh, I'm the white's right up over here. Oh, I found some living recipients of that. Giving him light colored boots because kind of a Middle Eastern thing. Just have it everything, but it seems to be more common in Middle Eastern stuff. And if it doesn't look right, we can always redo them as dark brown, but let's figure do something a little different. All right, spear time. But yeah, there's a lot of things that should be really easy on the internet, and they're just really difficult. Looking into sites where you could host files is just something I'm not interested in doing. You could burn, there's just so much misinformation. Like, I don't mind doing stuff for free, but I don't want to have to pay a certain amount a month just to have file abilities of storing it somewhere. It just doesn't make any sense. It's like doing these videos. I'd do these videos for free, but I don't want to have to pay YouTube $10 a month to have a streaming service. Like, why? That's just dumb. I don't need to make money off of it, but I also don't need to be punished for, I'm going to say providing a service, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, yeah, I'm providing entertainment, but I'm being entertained by you guys interacting with me as well. So it is a give and take. It's not all one-sided as it may appear. I'm doing this pretty much just to stay on track and be able to complete things. And you guys help me do that by showing up and typing a few words here and there, or more than a few words here and there. So maybe I'll do something that you guys can't figure out how to do one thing, and something that I do all the time. It's helpful, you share information so we don't fall into another dark age. Let's trim this shit. it was like this guy that I heard a rumor of. And I don't like rumors, but this doesn't really count as a rumor. But we'll just call it a rumor for lack of knowing what else to call it. I probably shouldn't have stuck the spear that far out because of where he's grabbing it. Well, it's too late now. And then he wouldn't have overlapped possibly on the other stand. That'll be okay. But anyways, this rumor I was starting to talk about. This guy used to run DBA competitions, or so I've heard. And someone in the middle of the U.S. And he got burned out. And he got burned out of running them because, well, he did it to himself. And this is what I think he did and what he did wrong and why I'm not going to fall into that same category. He'd put on DBA competition. He'd supply everything. He'd supply loaner troops for people to do. He'd supply prizes, which he paid out of his own pocket. And then to top it all off, he didn't play. So what's the incentive of somebody punishing themselves to do something like that? So he got burned out. Nobody took over the reins, or even they didn't split the responsibilities between a few people. And DBA in that part of the nation pretty much died because this one guy wasn't putting things on anymore. So, I don't have a problem putting on games. I don't have a problem making awards. I'm not going to give away like a $30 army to every event. I mean, what did I do to deserve that? Why do I need to be a martyr and then not play? The whole point is to play the game. Now, some people might say, oh, you can't play in your own tournament. Well, you can't if you're a corrupt bastard, But, if you're uncorruptible, like I like to think that I am, why not? Now, I don't have a problem, like, I'll play if there's an odd number of players or something like that, but I've also had the experience that, and this has happened to me one time, and this will probably not happen to me again because something I've instituted since then, but I've had somebody show up, and it hasn't happened very often considering how many tournaments I've played in, but somebody showed up to play in a tournament, and then it was going to be 3 rounds, and after 1 round, they're like, okay, I got to go now. So they screw everything up. And this is a particular tournament that I had bought. I had bought and painted an army specifically for that tournament. And then I played 1 game and wasn't able to play again. So the way to reinstitute that is, if somebody leaves the tournament for whatever reason, I forget what it was. I talked about it with Bitch. I think somebody who doesn't have a chance of winning ends up getting kicked out. It probably don't even have to do anything for the tournament, because the thing is like it's a lot different in Historicon. In our games in Florida, whoever runs the game gets nothing. They don't get a discount on entry. They don't give, they still have to pay the same amount for the hotel. They still have to pay the same amount for entering the convention. Like our convention in Orlando, I could run games the entire time. I still have to pay an entrance fee to go there, even though I'm running games the entire time. So there's not a huge incentive, in my opinion, to put on games because you get nothing for it. And you still have to spend the night at a hotel, which is expensive. And you still have to take time off from work, which is even more expensive. So anyhow, I have no problem playing in events that I run because it's just it's not like, you just match people up by year and then winners play winners, highest scores. It's no brainer. It's not like I'm doing matchups like hidden somewhere where I can't see, let me play this Frank guy because I can beat him. It's like, I don't care. I just want to have fun and have a good time. You know, if you're gonna make it so the person organizing the games that's doing all the work is not going to play either, well, then you're going to burn down and your community is going to die. You know? So it's a rumor because I heard that that's what happened to this person. And yeah, this person did disappear from the scene. They were kind of a prominent member in this part of the country. Not in this part of the country, in a different part of the country. And they were the only ones holding on. I'd like to think that if something were to happen to me, there would be somebody who would still carry on doing DBA games, but you never know. I mean, some people just... It's a lot different making videos as it is to putting on games at shows. Putting on games at shows is, you know, anybody can do it. Video is a lot of technology crap that is a pain in the ass to deal with. And also you have to have the right equipment and stuff. I just happen to have a high-end phone that could do it. I'm like, well, let's just give it a shot. Oh, I don't want to do Steel Knights. We don't want to do Steel Knights. It's the other metallic color. This one. That one's like a bright silver. So, number one rule is you got to make sure that people who are doing all the heavy lifting don't burn out. Because if they burn out, who's going to carry the torch then? Because, I mean, it's a pretty precarious thing at conventions. Like at our conventions in particular, it's very difficult to get over 10 players to play at a particular event. There's just probably 20 players in the area. But then this one guy, you know, so you end up getting 3 new people, which was the case this last convention. We got 3 new players, so to speak, but we had 3 or 4 older players that didn't make the convention. So it's always a wash. So if you don't get those new folks, you know, I mean, there's not a whole lot of people that are like Mitch and I that show up at every show. You know, a lot of people are like, well, I can't make it, or I'm in the Army Reserve and they didn't let me go to this one, or, you know, there's all kinds of excuses. Whether or not they're legitimate is irrelevant. They're not there, you know. So if you don't want the community to die, you need to have at least, and I'm fine with having 4 players. 4 players is fine. You know, all you can do is put on games, put on lots of games, so that, you know, if you put on one game at a show, which is what used to happen until I got involved, Marty would put on one game at a show. Well, if somebody wanted to play something else Saturday morning, they weren't going to be around to play DBA on Saturday morning, and you'd lose them as a player. But if you play DBA in every session, some period is going to appeal to somebody. You know, and then you got some people like us that we want to play DBA the whole convention. So yeah, I went to Historicon one time and like, well, these guys play DBA in every session. Why the hell can't we do that? Well, we don't have enough players. I said, well, friggin' let's do it. You know, what's the worst thing that can happen? You know, you play DBA with 3 other people the whole convention long. It's time to clean this stuff out. This is long overdue. Is I like people that says, hey, we want to run DBA at this convention. Who's going to do it? Well, you're the one asking to do it. Why don't you step up and do it? Well, I just want to play. You know? It's nothing to put on games. You know, I used to run games at shows. About 1996, I gave up for about 5 years. You know what burned me out is I had to do all the work. I had to provide all the troops. And then I had to, on top of that, I had to worry about who was going to mishandle my stuff, that it was going to come back home in a damaged state. And just play with random people, you know, and just, you never know. Sometimes you got a good guy, and some guy you got a guy that you had to deal with for 5 freaking hours who was, you know, you didn't want to be with. And DBA pretty much cured me of that. I moved my own guys. Other people can't damage my things. It's a lot more difficult for them too. And me happy. But all that responsibility of doing everything is just it's too much for me. It's too much for me. So must head away, work in the morning. Okay. Okay, Dirk, thanks for stopping by as always. And enjoy working from home in your underwear. I think you're still doing that. I don't know about the underwear part, but save a lot of fuel and a lot of inconvenience just working from home. If you can do that. I've said it before. If I was ever able to work from home one day, I'd like to do that one day in my life. Just one day I'd like to work from home. I would be so freaking efficient that one day they wouldn't want me to come back in the office. I would kick so much ass. They're like, man, we better keep this guy at home. He does a lot more work while he's at home. That would be me. That would be my goal. Yeah, you don't want the movers and shakers to get burned out. That's the worst thing you can do. Because by and large, there's very few people that will step up. And that goes for a lot of things. That goes for, community associations and stuff like that. The people that are doing all the heavy lifting. So one of my pet peeves is when you're already volunteering to do stuff and people want you to volunteer for more shit. I'm like, okay, well, what are you doing? Oh, I don't want to do anything. I just want to tell other people what they need to volunteer for. I'm like, well, that doesn't really work in my book. Step up or shut up, And those little award things I do, they're time consuming sometimes, but they're fun enough to do, and they're guaranteed that, if you get one, the name of your convention is spelled correctly. And that actually happened too. That was a true story that happened to us at Historicon. Is one of us, I don't think it's me. We got Historicon stuff, but the name of the convention was called Historican. So like every single thing, they misspelled the name of the freaking convention wrong. It's like you miss the most basic thing. It's like, screw it, I'll make them myself. They cost some time and about $2 to $3 each. I don't mind doing it. Now, if I get burned out on doing them, I won't do them anymore, but so far, so good. Do they mean anything? No, they're just nice to look back and go, oh yeah, I thought one time that I was playing with so-and-so and this happened, or I played with those guys and this. What are we down to? What are we down to? One person. My wingman. Well, whoever that might be. Like I said, you guys that don't do your own filming, whether or not you're aware of this or not, you're not able to tell who the person is that's on there. It just says one person, and they could be, somebody's just passing through that doesn't even speak the same language, or it might be your best bud. If they don't speak up, you don't know who it is. You can stay anonymous. It's not to call anybody out, and just, you may not be aware of it. I was not aware that was the case before I started doing my own videos. Like, I just figured if I was on, people knew I was there, so I'd behave, but, there's no way for the person filming the video to tell who exactly is left. Wish there was, then you could tailor a conversation based on whoever's left. But they're also allowed to be a lurker if they want to. Where did I leave my? Here we go. Here and this. Yeah, need a little bit more white in that. There's a couple of things you're not really aware of until you start making your own videos. Like, if you don't look up, you can't tell when somebody comes and enters the room. I don't get a noise notification or anything like that. And being nearsighted how I am, I've got to put my glasses on to see who's even up there. I can't even read it. It's just blurry. This is about, it's about 30 inches away from me. And I can't read what it is. I can kind of make out what an icon is. Like, I can tell what the difference is there between Dirk's icon and Enikaru's, because Enikaru's is very bright white. So, for whatever reason, his looks totally different than anybody else's. For whatever reason that may be, it's always been that way. This guy needs to have a little bit lighter brown colored hair. So let's do that. Let's not make him quite a blonde, but let's brighten this guy's hair a little bit. We got to be careful. Let's only use this special missions. This is a good brush. Let's not waste its deformity. Let's not get it deformed unnecessarily on things that it's not needed for. Now when we add these details, now we'll use this brush. And I stayed up pretty late last night, but it wasn't painting. Painting ends up, it's too relaxing, puts me to sleep. Although I have pulled all-nighters painting, but it's been many, many years. It's been many, many years. Alright, I feel like we need a different color hat for this dude. Maybe one that's a little bluish. Actually, that one viewer could be Wolf that said he was going to be in and out. Oh well, it's all good. I'm almost done with this thing, so we're going to have to stop when we're done with this figure. Let him sit for a little while and spray them and hopefully goop later today. And I really want to see these guys, what they look like on their stand. Let's clean this up a little bit. Got lots of leftover paint on here. It's worse with some colors than others. It's a strange color how this is just very and not a very bright blue color, but yet you look at the container and it is very blue, and that's accurate in what you guys are seeing. It's called pastel blue, but it's not very pastel in the container. We can do better than that. Let's take this out. See if I can get away with doing this. Let's take a little bit out, shove it in there, and then let's take the back of a brush or something like that. Oh, that worked pretty well. Had an unusual smell. Without being a bad smell, just kind of an unusual smell. If you use acrylic paints for a while, you really get accustomed to your paints not having any smell at all. So occasionally I run into paints that actually have a good smell as opposed to having a bad one. Rarely involve any paints having bad smells at all. So he got his hat to paint and a shield and a belt, and he's done. And all the spearmen are done. And this guy's just going to have a regular shield. He's not going to have any kind of nomenclature or anything on it. I actually have the troops to do a whole Cilician Armenian army. I've had them for a long time. That's where these guys came from. Just a tiny little bit of white to brighten this up. Now we're going to go ahead and use the same color. Instead of white for the fur, so to speak, we're just going to assume that it all got dyed together. I don't know if it makes that much of a difference because we still have to add white, so it looks really similar to some of the other ones. But hey, it's the thought that counts. Okay, I think that's enough. This belt. Let's use that lighter color. Make it pop a little bit. Still should have some of it left. People never showed up, or I put everybody to sleep. Sorry. Okay, the shield. Let me use this mahogany. There's like a mahogany brown or something like that. Where tis it? I bet it's this one down here. Saddle brown. That one will work. Get the black out. I don't know that I'm going to add any more. Maybe a little bit more color. Like a gash in his shield on the front. I might just leave that alone. Looks like it's almost like a mistake in the molding. Okay, we're almost done with this, so we're going to stop here. Wait for this to dry and seal it up. And this guy's just a plain dude, so let's take a look at these spearmen all together. See that gash in the mold there? That's built into the figure. Okay, here's the Armenian spearmen. There'll be 2 stands of solid spear, and they'll all be mixed around and be on the 2 different stands. So thanks for coming by, folks. If you came by, if not, well, maybe catch me on the next one. And